Hey, what's going on everybody? So welcome to the fourth video in this OpenVPN setup series. This is how to configure OSPF as your routing protocol for these VPN tunnels, which in this case there's just one, so you're probably not going to see too much use here, but trust me, it's great if you're using more than one tunnel. Now, what this is, as opposed to static, is we're going to put a dynamic routing protocol, or OSPF, on these routers, which will dynamically update every other router in its kind of OSPF network with all of the routes that it knows about. So instead of having to type in all of these routes on each router every time you add a VPN tunnel, what you're just going to do is you're going to add that router to the OSPF network, and it's going to update every other router that it knows about with all the routes that it has. So if every router has OSPF running on it, then every router is going to know about every route that they're advertising. So let's just go ahead and jump into the configuration here. If you're not really read up on networking and dynamic routing protocols, this might not make the most sense to you. I'm not going to actually go into the specifics of OSPF, how it works, and the theory of it, because there's entire sections of books written on this. It's actually a requirement to know OSPF in a bit of depth for Cisco certifications. This is an enterprise level protocol, so you probably won't be really needing to run this anywhere, or you won't be seeing it ran anywhere unless you're working in enterprise networking. So with all that said, let's just log into our home router here, enter configure mode, and first thing I'm going to do is take out those static routes that we put in the last video. So delete protocols. Let's just do delete protocols static, commit, save, and let's do set protocols OSPF, and we need to define an area. So I'm not going to get into the area IDs. You can technically pick whatever number for the area you want. However, a rule in OSPF is that every area has to connect to area 0. So put it in area 0. And then we need to define what network we're going to advertise. So on our home router, we have our local network, which is the 192.168.1.0 network, and that's a /24. So we'll hit enter there. What that means is that that is going to be a network that we're enabling OSPF for, and that's going to be advertised to all the other routers. So another one that we need to put in, area 0 network, is that subnet that we came up with for the OpenVPN tunnel, which was 10.0.0.0. And I'm going to attach /30 to it. If that's the only tunnel you're using, you can use a 24 or whatever, but 30 is just to conserve addresses, because if you add different tunnels in the future, you can reuse, well, not reuse, but use addresses from this 10.0.0 range, and your next one would start at like .5. So .5 and .6 is what you would use for your second tunnel, and then your next one, .9.10, you would use for that. So this just conserves IP addresses. So those are the two networks that we want to advertise. We are not going to be advertising our public IP. Now the reason for that is because, and this is a very like niche case where it would screw things up, but if your friend was to type in some kind of website and it just happened to be on the same subnet as your public IP, then it's going to route it over the tunnel and it'll go through your house to get out. So just don't advertise your public addresses at all. Now the next thing we're going to do is set protocols OSPF, and we're going to define neighbors. Now I do believe this will work without the neighbor command, but I've had a little bit of limited success, so I always put in the neighbor command anyway, even though it's technically not really required. But you're going to put in the IP address of your friend's router here, of the OpenVPN tunnel connection. So 10.0.0.2 for our friend's router, and we're going to set some options. Poll interval of 60. So that means every minute it's going to check to see that it's still alive. And we're also going to do priority 0. And actually I don't remember what priority 0 does, so don't ask me, but I put it in anyway. After that, we're going to define passive interfaces. Now, this isn't really required that you do this, but I always do it. And that's set protocols OSPF passive interface default. And what this does is it means by default, no interface is going to send out OSPF traffic. And I like to do this because I don't want to send OSPF traffic into the public internet, and I don't want to send it into a part of the network where I don't need it. So right now we only need to send OSPF traffic down our virtual interface. So to do that, if it's set to default, we need to do set protocols OSPF passive interface exclude virtual tunnel 0. So effectively these two commands just mean that OSPF traffic is only going to run on this virtual tunnel, no other interface. And that's all we need to do for this router. So commit and save, and at this point we can SSH into our friend's router and do those same configurations over here.
So enter configure mode, set protocols, OSPF, area 0, define our networks. So over here we have the 192.168.0.0 network, which is a /24. And it says it already exists. I had an issue with this router. I couldn't take those commands out last time I tried this for whatever reason. So I'll put in our other network, which is the 10.0.0.0/30 network for the virtual tunnel. That probably already exists too. Yep. Once we have our networks in, we do our neighbors. Oh, there we go. Neighbor 10.0.0.1 and put in the pole interval of 60 and the priority of 0. And then the last thing is to define our passive interfaces. So OSPF passive interface default and passive interface exclude virtual tunnel 0. So at this point we can do a commit and a save. Actually, I didn't ever take out those static routes, so let's do delete protocols static, commit that, just so we're running all OSPF and nothing else. So if we exit out of that, we can do a show IP OSPF neighbor, and you can see we don't have any associations yet. Hopefully we will very soon. Alright, so I actually had a little bit of an issue with the friend router. The configurations were right, but for some reason I was having an issue clearing out the OSPF commands from the last time I tried it. It's doing some weird stuff where it just wouldn't remove the configuration, and it was also doing some weird stuff where it would not enable OSPF to run on that interface, even though we configured it to do it properly. So all I did was a reboot on the friend router, and if we do the show IP OSPF neighbors, you can see we now have a neighbor relationship between the two routers. So just to show, we can still ping 192.168.1.1, which is the home router's IP, pinging from the friends router. We can hit it. And if we do a show IP route, we can see that we have these new routes in there with an O. It means it was learned via OSPF. And these with the stars are the ones that have actually been learned from the other router. So you can see 192.168.1.0 via our virtual tunnel 10.0.0.1. And it goes out the interface virtual tunnel 0. So those, you can kind of see how it would automatically update. If we were to add a third network in there, enable OSPF on it, we would have another OSPF route for whatever network we defined on that one. So that is how you set up OSPF. And a couple other commands, I actually just use this one, show IP OSPF interface. This will show you which ones OSPF is enabled on. So not enabled on Ethernet 0, Ethernet 1, it looks like it's actually enabled on that one for whatever reason. ETH2 not enabled, ETH3 not enabled, loopback not enabled, virtual tunnel 0. We have a neighbor count of 1 and adjacent neighbor count is 1. If we had multiple, that would be however many we have running OSPF. So if we exit out of there, go back to the home router, do another one, show IP route. Should have another one, yep, OSPF route to 192.168.0.0. That is in there. So OSPF is set up and working, and that is the end of this OpenVPN configuration series. So we configured OpenVPN to start, set up the virtual tunnel interface, assigned it a subnet, and then we set up dynamic DNS in the second video so that if your public IPs change, that wouldn't affect you. In the third video, I showed you how to set up static routing, and then this one, how to do the routing using OSPF. If you want any more detail on any of this, put it in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Hopefully this made sense, and hopefully you got a good OpenVPN site-to-site tunnel setup.